So you tell me we have a franchise movie that involves spy-like characters, revolves around the theme of family, and it has James Bond Moonraker in it? This sounds a lot like a film I just reviewed. Now, I'm not going to purposefully make comparisons to Fast 9, the Fast Saga, but this is what we got. Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of Black Widow. This movie's directed by Cate Shorthand, and the movie stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, with David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz. Now, when I first heard they were making a Black Widow movie, my first thoughts were, oh, thank God, it's about time. But then I learned that this movie wasn't going to be an origin story per se, like Wolverine's movie was, but instead this was going to take place during the lull after Captain America Civil War, when the Avengers were, as they say in the movie, divorced. And so I was curious what the plot was going to be, because whatever happened in this movie had to be addressed or mentioned in the movies that came after it, right? Right? Unfortunately, they're not. And so we're given a movie with a filler subplot that has filler results. Now, granted, there is one thing that had this movie going for it, and that's the future. That's the idea of what they could do going forward in other MCU TV shows or other MCU movies. But aside from that, we get a spy movie with Black Widow. And if I don't sound too excited about that, it's because I'm not. So Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, is on the run from the government, and she gets roped into this conspiracy. She gets roped into these series of events. This was a lot like Mad Max Fury Road, where Scarlett Johansson's character is Mad Max. Events happen around her. She doesn't set forth on this path. It just happens, and she kind of just goes along with it. She runs into her long-lost sister, Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, and they go on this adventure. They go on this mission. And then they come across other people that they know, and then we get more people added to the mission. Now, this movie tonally is all over the place. They set forth to make this action-packed, family-esque drama, but just like Avengers Age of Ultron, every time there's a dramatic moment, or there's something that serious should be happening, or, lives are in grave danger, there's comedy that takes away from it. And that's the one problem I had with Avengers Age of Ultron, was everything was too quippy. Regardless of what the stakes were, regardless of what was happening, regardless of the drama, you'd have a character say something like a smart aleck that just would diffuse the whole situation. That's what we get in this movie, and we get a lot of it. Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, she is the best part of this movie. But everything that happens, she has to have a quip. She has to have some smart aleck remark that is like, okay, you're taking me out of the movie by you commenting on things that are happening because things aren't happening fast enough, or things aren't happening to your liking. It just, they don't feel like serious characters. And that's one problem that I have with this movie, is that it's supposed to be dramatic, yet every time it's about to get dramatic, there's comedy, or they pull the rug out from underneath you because it just halted. It comes to a stop. As far as the action goes, there is a lot of it, but there isn't really any build-up. There isn't one scene that stands out in this movie. The scenes that I can recall, unfortunately, are scenes we've all seen in the trailer. And now let me get to the villains of this movie. Okay, so the main villain is memorable because of the actor that portrays him. Now, the villain we've seen in the trailers, Taskmaster, going into this movie, I wanted them to establish two things. I was really hoping, I'm like, alright, if we're getting a Black Widow movie, do one of two things for just little old me. I wanted them to address Budapest, or Budapest, and I wanted them to make Taskmaster a person. Not a drone, not a robot like I had suspected they were going to do, but an actual person. Now, did they enlighten me with these? I'm not going to say. But I will say that I was surprised by one thing and let down by the other. Now, the acting in this movie is okay. Only because Scarlett Johansson is just in the middle of the road. Like I said, she's not a person that's really driven in this movie. She's there just along for the ride who kind of wants to patch up her family and emotional problems. But Florence Pugh is the one that gives us any emotion. She's really the driving force behind the movie. She's the best part. David Harbour, it's nice to see him, but again, he's portrayed as this dad that's emotionally unavailable. And that's one issue that I kind of had with this movie, is that the way they portray men and women. Now, this movie isn't as, girl power fueled as Captain Marvel, but it's also not portraying men as repugnant as Birds of Prey was. It's somewhere in the middle. It's as if Kate Shorthand and the writers were told specifically, okay, we want you to go back and watch every single Marvel movie with Black Widow in them. Only watch her scenes and then make a movie around that. Because this movie is just gimmick and parody and joke of Black Widow and just nods and references to things that she mentioned or things they briefly showed us in Avengers Age of Ultron, and then they just expanded on that. Along with Winter Soldier 2.0. This movie tries so hard to be the next Winter Soldier type movie with spy and espionage and this huge corruption, this huge conspiracy about. So I'm sitting there watching the movie and I'm thinking the whole time, okay, this movie is about James Bond and Russians. Don't believe me? Here are some coincidences that I thought up while I was watching this movie, involving some of the cast and crew. Alright, you have Ray Winstone, who was in Indiana Jones 4 with Russians. Rachel Weisz, who's married to James Bond, Daniel Craig. David Harbour is in Stranger Things Season 3, involving Russians. Florence Pugh was in Midsommar, involving brainwashing. And Olga Kurylenko was in Quantum of Solace with James Bond. Because this whole movie, it doesn't know if it wants to be serious and dramatic and family-oriented and emotional, or comedic, action-packed, and, just another funny, feel-good Avengers type movie. The best thing of this film was Florence Pugh, because we all know what happened to Natasha Romanoff in Avengers Endgame, and so I was only looking forward to that part that goes, okay, how is this movie going to tie into the current MCU timeline? Because realistically, this movie could have taken place before the first Avengers film. Because the events in this film aren't echoed, aren't felt, they don't impact any of the Avengers films before or after it. So I was like, why didn't they just take this and put it first before the first Avengers movie? To kind of make an excuse as to why the Avengers aren't around. But after you watch the movie, you'll understand why. The best part of this movie is the post-credit scene, and that's not good. So, because the action scenes are really forgettable, there's no one scene in this movie that has you go, okay, I'm going to remember this movie for that. And the actors, they're okay for the most part. I like the caliber of actors and actresses, but what they're given isn't very strong. The music, the villains, underwhelming. Because of that, I'm going to give Black Widow a C. This is definitely a filler movie. So until next time, guys, see ya.